The X-Men is probably my favorite thing in the Marvel Universe. And at the end of the day, I think Wolverine and Magneto would go down as my favorite Marvel characters of all time. Now, I do not know Marvel the way I know DC. My knowledge in DC vastly overweighs my knowledge in Marvel. I haven't really touched a Marvel comic book in over 15 years. I really don't know much about that world anymore. Although I do miss the X-Men. I love the characters, I love the world building, I love the idea behind that team, and I like the X-Men so much that, in all honesty, the X-Men could be plucked, thrown into DC, and you could still find a way to make the X-Men work within DC's world. So because of that, a lot of you like the Sinister Six ideas. Today I'm going to do who would DC's X-Men look like. Now 100% DC's X-Men is likely just Doom Patrol. But even still, Doom Patrol has various differences from who the X-Men actually are. I'm not going to give you multiple teams of what an X-Men could look like. I'm just going to give you guys one huge list of characters I thought would be a good fit for a DC version of X-Men. Obviously, we gotta look at misfits almost. We gotta look at people who maybe don't fit the normal view of society. Maybe they're ashamed of themselves. Maybe they have parental problems, or maybe they have no parents at all. Maybe they're poor or they're rich. They need to learn some valuable life lessons from a leader running this X-Men school the same way Professor X does. People who don't truly understand the extent of their powers and need teaching understanding them. And even though DC isn't known for mutants, people who are born with abilities, DC is no stranger to having characters in their universe who are actually born with their abilities. So characters like that will be thrown into the mix as well. I am going to keep the Doom Patrol roster off of this list because it's too obvious, except for one character. We have to have Niles Caulder on this list, the Chief. He needs to be there. It is a staple. It is a must. Genius level intellect, just like Professor X, and he's in a wheelchair. How do you have an X-Men team without a character in a wheelchair who honestly starts the X-Men team? Caulder is the person in Doom Patrol who brings together all the freaks of the world, people who are ashamed of who they are and what they look like. He bands them together to fight crime, to stop villains, but to also teach them that the way they are, the way they look, who they are, is fine. It's okay. Be yourself. Don't be ashamed, which is a huge player of Professor X and the X-Men. So he has to be part of this team. I also have Raven on this list, and I feel like she would be a perfect character for an X-Men. Someone who is outcasted, has no real family, needs some sort of backbone or support to truly understand who she is and to understand the massive extent that her powers go to. She often can be a character who doesn't think she belongs anywhere, but a DC's X-Men would be a perfect place for her. She would be a character who would be lost in the world, and I think that DC's Professor X, the Chief, would be able to find her, pluck her from her tormented environment, bring her to his school, and teach her what it means to be a superhero, somebody who can rely on her the same way as she can rely on other people. I threw another magic user into this X-Men team, Constantine. I feel like Constantine would potentially be the Gambit of the X-Men, or at the very least somebody who you would never think would be on a team like the X-Men, but once he's there, he actually ends up finding out he enjoys being there, and he actually enjoys helping people who are lost in their life, or helping these younger ones grow into their own. I feel like the Chief would maybe even want to use Constantine as his Cyclops. So if the Chief is going to have his right-hand man in Constantine, he's also going to have his left-hand woman. He's going to have his Jean Grey, and I feel like that should be Black Canary. A big reason why I'm throwing Black Canary into this team is because she is one of the few DC characters who actually was born with her abilities, but also the fact that she does work well in teams, and we have seen over the history of comic books cartoons, whatever it may be, she does often get used as somebody who trains students, who trains younger ones how to fight and how to prepare for battle. She could be that exact person for a DC's X-Men alongside the Chief and Constantine. Now, I threw another DC mutant type of a character in this team. That would be Jericho, the son of Deathstroke, who was also born with his abilities. Kind of interesting. I feel like Jericho would maybe potentially be sent off to DC's X-Men to learn valuable life lessons and to learn what it means to be a metahuman. But also at the same time, I could see a story develop where he's very conflicted. He's got good and bad in him. I feel like there could be a type of story where Jericho could leave DC's X-Men and actually join a DC's Mutant Brotherhood, which maybe I will also make a villain or anti-villain type of a squad for DC's Brotherhood. I also put Zatanna part of this school. Now, in all honesty, I usually prefer Zatanna to be an adult. The reason why I put her on this squad is because, once again, kind of a mutant presence. She was born with her abilities, and if you do want to go the route that Young Justice took, you could do that same idea for DC's X-Men if you wanted Zatanna to be younger. Being part of this team, she would have the perfect opportunity to, who knows, maybe become friends with someone like a Raven. A girl who's very lonely has now found friendship in Zatanna, and Zatanna could also utilize the training from Constantine. Next up, I put in Vixen, and I feel like Vixen could actually be used as the Storm figure. Someone who teaches these other DC characters, whether they be young or just starting to get a tone to their abilities, what it actually means to utilize your abilities and how to do it the best ways possible. If anyone's going to know how to do that, it's going to be Vixen. She could also be part of the Chief's kind of right hand, left hand man or woman. And along with Vixen comes in Beast Boy. That would be a perfect pairing for Beast Boy, as Vixen could take him under her wing and pretty much teach him everything he needs to know about shapeshifting into different animals. I threw in Captain Atom as well, and the biggest reason why I did that, not just because of how powerful he is and how much help he could be to an X-Men team, but he is literally a living weapon. I feel like the government would so desperately want him so they could steady him, literally torture him to see if they could take some of the abilities away from his body. He would need a safe haven, and the X-Men school would be a perfect place for Captain Atom to stay. This could be the opportunity for him to actually learn more about himself and his abilities when the right and wrong times are to use it, because of how crazy powerful he can be. Black Lightning is the next character to join this team, and I guess you could really make him more akin to Storm in the sense of his abilities, even though he can't really do as much as she can. That's not to say that his lightning capabilities and powers are not powerful, because they absolutely are. Black Lightning is less about family problems and less about his acceptance in the wider world society. It's more about coming to this school to, once again, learn how to use his powers more properly and to be in a safe place where he can be himself. Although I don't see Black Lightning being more of a student type of a character, when the X-Men has to go out on missions, who's actually going? Well, you would have Black Canary, Constantine, Black Lightning, Vixen, and maybe one or two other main X-Men characters. I've also thrown in Metamorpho, and he is very similar to Doom Patrol's Element Woman. So I feel like this would be a character that the Chief would desperately want to track down, bring him to his X-Men school, and be able to teach him and train him in his very fascinating abilities. Metamorpho would also 110% 100% be a character who is ashamed of how he looks and what he can do with his body, he would also be very scared. He wouldn't know what to do in the wider world. So coming to a safe haven like this would definitely help him. I almost feel like Metamorpho could even become the poster boy for X-Men in certain ways. And not saying Metamorpho is a teenager when he comes there, he's definitely going to be an adult, but even adults need help. And I feel like Metamorpho could be that character that when he came to this DC X-Men school, he was very battered and mentally damaged. He didn't know who he was anymore. He was literally terrified of himself. But after what the school and all the members and what the chief did for him, how they helped him realize who he was, how he gained control of his powers, it is literally a sign to any other DC character who might suffer from these types of problems. Come to this school. They will help you. Terra is another member of this group. Friends with Beast Boy, maybe there's a situation where Terra needs help and Beast Boy convinces her to come to this X-Men school. She just reminds me of a character as well who, when she comes to this school, she is obviously very powerful, just not trained properly. But over time, she could easily become the most strongest DC X-Men out there. Andrew Bennett is another character I'm putting in here. He's literally just a vampire, and this is a guy who maybe wants to atone for some of his mistakes. Living centuries needing to actually bleed out his victims and feed off of them. He doesn't want to do that anymore. And maybe the chief could look at him as a special case scenario where he maybe wants to help him fight off those urges and maybe needs to give him different options on how he can survive as a vampire, but also do good moving forward. I also threw in Captain Steel. This was a guy who was born with a very rare genetic disorder where his bones literally crumbled on him. His father saved his life by basically sewing his body to metallic bones, even replacing some of his organs with metal. He's kind of like your mixture of a Wolverine and a Colossus put together, and I feel like this would be a guy who would 100% struggle in the outer world of society and would need to come to this school to feel safe and to become accustomed to what he is now. I place Cyborg in here too. The reason why I have him is because he is much more machine than he is human now, and you definitely know there are going to be times with Cyborg where he doesn't feel human anymore, and he might even feel ashamed of what he has become. But the beauty of Cyborg is that he can actually be more human than human characters. So to have a group of these types of characters around him to help him learn that, to teach him he's not just a machine, it would do a character like Cyborg wonders. I put Enchantress in this team as well, just because she's not always a villain, and definitely the human side of the character is someone who could use the help getting used to her abilities. Also, having her control the other personality in which Enchantress actually is. Enchantress might actually be more of the Wanda Maximoff when you really think about it. I do believe Enchantress is like a Jericho, someone who's got good and bad in her and might be part of DC's X-Men, but one day might translate over to DC's Brotherhood. Firestorm is another addition to this team. Having two teenagers grow up in a school like this to hone their abilities, or having the teenager and the scientist works perfectly here. If you have Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein fused together, I feel like that actually gives you the Beast vibe, because Martin Stein does give me this idea that he would be the scientist lecturer of the group, which is who Beast often can be. And then another main member that I would throw in here is Plastic Man. I mean, have you seen how he turns into Plastic Man? It's pretty disgusting. He is literally the definition of a misfit, a character who's going to bring a little more comedy to everything in a type of school that might be a little sad or depressing when you have so many minds and so many characters coming into this place who feel depressed. Plastic Man might be able to be the one to cheer everybody up, even if sometimes he maybe doesn't choose the best of times to bring out that type of humor. He still could be needed. But also, to his abilities and his power set, he's perfectly suited for a DC's X-Men. And then, just for honorable mentions, characters who could easily be part of this squad: El Diablo, Fire and Ice, and Vibe. So there you go, guys. That is what I came up with for DC's version of the X-Men. Like I said, there's probably so many characters out there who could belong for a various amount of reasons. And that's what I want from you guys now, to put in the comments below who you think would be a really good fit for DC's X-Men. And also, if you are interested, let me know. I could make more of the villain side of things, DC's Brotherhood. What would that squad look like? But that is all I have for you on this one, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it. So until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.